I wanted to take a moment to go over the Marketing Cup simulation, to provide you some idea of the setup of the simulation and some tips for how to play it to get the most out of the learning experience. So first we can start with what are the goals of this exercise. One of the first goals is for you to gain experience in resource allocation. I've never met a marketer yet that didn't want to have more money to spend on everything. So for this simulation, you're going to get some experience trying to make the trade-offs of deciding where is money going to have the most effect and be the most useful. Second, I want you to develop an appreciation for the role of the marketing mix. There are a lot of different ways to achieve our objectives. So for these, you'll need to decide where do you spend this money. There won't be obvious answers. Many times there'll be ambiguity. But there I think you'll want to rely some on your intuition, some general frameworks that we've talked about, as well as some simplifying heuristics. This presentation hopes to give you some idea of some of those that are most effective. And last, I want you to experience the process of marketing planning. So here you'll need to think about situation analysis, our 5 C's. You'll need to use data to test insights. As well, you'll need to think about the marketing strategy. Who are your target segments? What is the value proposition you want to give them? And last, our marketing mix, the 4 P's. Obviously, this marketing mix is critical for supporting our products. And so in this simulation, as in real life, you'll need to launch new products and then provide them the proper support so that they can succeed. So for the setup of the simulation, you'll log in at marketingcupsim.com. You should have received an email with your login ID and password. Your team manages a tennis string company. And one reason I picked tennis strings is, many of you are unlikely to bring in a lot of preconceptions about this category. And so it allows us to have kind of a more pure setting to think about how we can apply a lot of our marketing principles. As you start playing, you will play against AI or artificial intelligence. You will not be playing against each other. The robots that make these decisions for your competition are adaptive. They will respond to the specific decisions you make. As such, each team starts off in the same position, but then the decisions made by every firm will take a unique path. I prefer this setup as playing versus each other can be quite unfair if some teams play well while others do not. Here, your competitors are always reasonably smart in their actions. We play several rounds, so you'll have plenty of time to show your abilities or recover from mistakes. As well as setup, the responses are modeled using real-world data. So a lot of the parameters and the responses that you get to your spending are based on patterns that we see in data from the real world. And you'll make a total of 7 decision rounds as a team. At the end of those 7 rounds, you'll be told the simulation is done and be congratulated. So let's get into the product. So you have 7 attributes for your tennis strings. One is the price. How expensive is it to buy one set of tennis strings? Another is the brand. What are the general impressions of the company making the tennis strings? And so as you launch new products, you'll generally be able to leverage your brand. Third, there's the look. How attractive are the tennis strings? Do they look stylish? Do they offer lots of colors? Fourth is the durability. How long do the strings last before they break? Which will obviously affect how often people need to repurchase the strings. There's the power. How well does the string respond to help you generate powerful shots? There's the control. How well do the strings help you to produce accurate shots? And lastly, there's the spin. The ability of the strings to help you create and generate spin on the ball. These 7 attributes will help define how a consumer looks at a product and evaluates it. In terms of finding out about the different products and purchasing those products, here's an overview of the market flow. So the customers have 4 different segments. There's the casual comfort player, the performance ace player, the bargain hunter player, and the basic novice player. In the simulation, you can find out more detail on each of these segments in that research report. Those customers will go to different retailers. There are 4 types of retailers here. There's a pro shop that would often be like inside of a tennis club. There's online, which you can buy through the web. There are big retail stores, like large sporting goods stores, of which tennis is one product they may carry. And there's wholesalers that often sell through a lot of smaller stores and they are a go-between for that. So the consumers or customers will pay the retail price to those retailers. In exchange, the retailers give those customers information about the products, advice on which product may be a good fit. They supply the products and provide them on the shelf and help install them, and last, provide service in terms of stringing your rackets and any follow-up issues customers may have. As well, we have the firms that make these strings. So they're going to provide the customers advertising to let them know about their product, coupons that they can use at the retailer, and samples so the consumer can learn about the product. Likewise, those firms work with retailers as well. So the retailer will pay a wholesale price to the firm to get the product. In exchange, the firm provides the product. They provide a sales team and sales support, such as displays for advertising the product, how to educate the retailer's employees, and so on, as well as trade funds. These are dollars the retailers can use to promote that firm's product in their store. In terms of the customers making decisions, this is an overview of the customer logic. So in the top left, we have the different values of your string. So again, there are 7 attributes, and they have objective values of how well they perform. But as you know from our consumer behavior learnings, what really matters is the perceptions people have, what they believe about the product. And so they'll have beliefs about each product for each attribute. Then they'll combine those attributes to get an overall expected utility or a liking of that product. Now, according to the customer segment, they'll show differences in how they do their weights. Some segments may put a lot of weight to price, while others may put a lot of weight on durability. It all varies by the person. That expected utility is presumably what they walk into the store thinking of what they may want about the product. And they may have some choice rule, like they always pick this brand. Or they may look at what's on promotion. That can obviously help change which products they may choose. As well as what their retailer carries, right? So they have intentions to buy certain products. And obviously the retailer can encourage or discourage certain products in terms of how much they push certain products. Now, what's going to decide how much a retailer decides to push a product will be the margin. How much money does the retailer make when they sell that product? The trade allowance. Those are those funds that the retailer is given to help promote and push the product, as well as the sales team. Has the manufacturer's sales team given the retailer information and other stuff to help push the product? And based off this retailer push, the consumer has intentions of what they intend to buy, but then they may notice other things at the retail. It could be out of stock. Lots of things can happen that can still change the actual purchase. As well, some drivers of that purchase will include awareness. Does the customer know about the brand and know to look for it? Awareness is going to be driven a lot by the advertising and the media focus. Has the firm spent money to speak to that consumer? Coupons are going to help become aware of a product, as well as samples. And likewise, we have the retail availability. How many retailers actually carry the product? And so obviously the sales team will be a big factor for that. And finally, we see in the bottom left the messaging. So one big factor driving the perceptions that consumers have for each product is going to be the ads they see. And so that's going to include both is a lot of money spent to reach that customer, the media focus, and the message, what attributes are emphasized. And that's going to be the creative focus. So that messaging really depends on the amount of advertising spending, whether it's targeted to you, and whether it's emphasizing certain attributes. And then all these factors come together to help create that market of customers making decisions. In many ways, a lot of these interactions, that is the black box and the key workings of the simulation. So in terms of what's these drivers, you have your decisions that you will make for your product for all these different factors. And you'll find that information all on the decisions control panel. So every decision you need to make each period is on one page or one screen with multiple tabs. So a few things to note on this page. On the top row is where you can save your changes or cancel changes or play the next round, or you can rewind to replay a round if things didn't go well. One thing to note here is make sure you save your changes before clicking on other links, other files, and other things. It's easy to make changes and forget to save them before you play. As well, one thing that can help with the decisions is you have a little year with the call out that says see past years that will let you see last year, 2 years before, you can scroll among the years to see what you did last time. As well, you have the budget that you've spent and the budget that you have left. So it'll tell you how much you have left to spend, as you can't go over budget. So it keeps track of that for you to tell you when you're over or not. And then you can see the different decisions for the retailer decisions in terms of the volume discounts that you give them. We have for the trade allowance for each channel. We have the sales team across the channels. Notice that those decisions on the left are all firm level decisions that apply to all your products. Put another way, you pick your sales team and they sell all of your products. You don't choose a sales team for each product. And likewise, the trade allowance are dollars that the firm gets to spend on any of your products the way they see fit. It's not earmarked for one specific product. On the right side are all the decisions you'll make for the different products. And you can use the tabs to move among the products that you have right now. And here you'll set the price, the advertising level, the coupons and samples for that product. You'll also say how you want to do your media focus for that product. What % of your efforts do you want to go to each segment? You'll tend to want to focus certain products on certain segments. And for the creative, you can emphasize 2 attributes that you really want to play up for your product that you think are its strengths. As well, make sure to notice that Design New tab. You will have chances through the simulation to create new products. And when you click that Design New, that's going to let you create that new product for this. In terms of the timeline for how you're going to play, so year 1, you have a product called Emerald, and your focus in year 1 is really going to be that marketing mix, kind of fixing the mix. We can't assume that the past decisions are optimal. Year 2, you'll be able to get some feedback on those decisions and tweak your mix a bit more. Year 3, you'll be able to design a second product, a new product. And so here it's really about trying to find a new place to create value. Year 4, you will launch that new product. And a lot of the focus of year 4 will be building the awareness and the retail presence for that new product. Year 5, you will get another chance to create a new product in your R&D. And here you really want to try to fill out that portfolio. And then year 6, you will launch that third product and obviously try to build awareness in retail to get some more practice doing that again. And then you'll play year 7, managing your portfolio, and the game will be complete. And on the bottom here, it just shows you the research and development, how to create a new product. So you will pick your target attribute levels for the different attributes. You don't pick price and brand. Obviously, those are already set. You're picking 5 performance dimensions of your product. And while ideally you would love to have a 10 for every product, that would obviously be an infeasible product. So it will tell you whether the product is feasible or not, as well as the cost that it'll take to make the product that you've designed. And then the next period, you'll have the chance to actually launch that product and put it out in the market. Now, one decision you'll make is the pricing. I want to talk a moment about the pricing math. This can be a little bit complicated for people that aren't familiar with the way supply chain and channels work. So the way it works is that you charge there's a wholesale price that is what you actually receive as revenue from the retailer. And so this will equal the manufacturer's suggested retail price, which you set in your decisions, minus a volume discount. So retailers expect volume discounts. That is, as they sell more, they get a bigger discount off. This is some of their margin of how they make money. As well, you have your net price will equal your wholesale price, minus you also, in this industry, you're expected to give that trade allowance. Those are dollars that go to the retailer to support your product. So in fact, you don't get to keep those dollars. Think of it like a kickback. You're giving money back to the retailer to support your product. So at the end of the day, you get to keep your wholesale price minus that trade allowance. It's an expense that you have to incur. For the volume discount, the way that works is you set different thresholds. In general, every retailer expects some discount, because that's how they make their money. That's the markup, effectively, that they get to keep. And so I've had one example here where you get to set the different breakpoints that you want. So in this example, the retailer gets a 10% discount for selling between 0 to 1 million. They get a 9% discount for 1 million to 2 million, and an 8% discount for 2 million plus. So as an example, if your manufacturer suggested retail price was $10, your volume was 500,000 units, and your trade allowance was 10%, we can get to your net price. So first we would take your MSRP of 10 minus your volume discount, which at 500,000 units would be 10%. So that means we would get $9 for our wholesale price. And then our trade allowance means we have to give another 10% of that $9. So we would get to keep $8.10 at the end, and 90 cents would go toward supporting our product, the money for the retailer to do that. Now, two things to note about that. One, that trade allowance percentage is calculated on the wholesale price, not the suggested retail price, while the volume discount is multiplied by the manufacturer's suggested retail price. Second, this volume discount, it applies to the volume across all of your products for your firm, not just one product. So as you get more products, they're more likely to get more discounts and sell more volume for those sales. In terms of thinking about your budgeting, a few tips here are think about the bottom-up budgeting. So think of how much you kind of need to cover your market. So let's say, for example, you have a $25 retail price, of which 20 is your revenue. Let's say a segment has 5 million customers that you really want to target, and they buy twice a year on average, and that you have 25% share. So per person, this means you get $10 of revenue per person, right? Because $20 is your revenue, they purchase it twice a year, so that's $40, and I get 25% of the share. Right? Now, to spend 15% of your revenue on ads, you would budget for $1.50 per person, because that's 15% of that $10. So if we build that up based on how big the segment is, that would lead to $7.5 million in total spending, as you can see below. So it's the 5 million people times the $10 of revenue times the 15% of revenue that I want to spend on advertising. So it's a way to just get some idea for how much spending I need that's tied to the size of the segment. And you can do a similar approach for coupons and samples. Now, one thing to notice about your budgeting amounts, you have to think about what's your main goal and what is that spending accomplishing. So for ads, you often are trying to build awareness. So generally, you're going to spend a large percentage of your sales on advertising when you first launch a product because it has very few sales and you're trying to build up that awareness. As you get more awareness built up for the product over time, you would expect to spend less percentage of your sales on advertising because now I have a high awareness and my sales are growing. In contrast, when you think about like your sales force and coupons, that often scales with sales. So as your sales keep growing and growing, the sales force and the coupons necessary to support them also tend to grow and grow, especially the coupons. So that's one way to think about the budgeting amounts, just to think about it kind of per person and what that means. Another way to think about your budgeting is diminishing ROI. Right? As you spend more, it's going to tend to get less and less effective. So we're going to have a concave curve. That is, doubling the spending usually doesn't double the effect of it. There's lots of possibilities, but generally you're going to have some kind of flattening out as you get diminished ROI. And so what you're trying to do with your spending is make sure you're not in that range where it's flat and you keep spending more. This is not an easy problem to solve. You have a couple research tools that will help you get some idea of where the spending may not be contributing anymore. And for these, you should check out the contribution mix research report and the field study, which will let you try out different spending levels to see what the effect is of those. So I want to now give you just a few guiding principles for the simulation to help you think about each decision. So for the suggested retail price, here we really want to think about value-based pricing. So think about who is your main competitive product, and then think about whether your product is better than theirs. The conjoint research report will often help with this. And then if you're better a bit, you add that much to that competitive price to get that value-based price. And then also make sure here too that you watch the competitive response over time. If they're raising their price or lowering it, you want to stay calibrated with that competitor. For the volume tiers, here I think you're generally trying to just apply that highest volume discount tier to just a few firms. It's meant for the really largest firms. And I would look at the retailer volume histogram and look for natural breaks. that's telling you kind of, well, here's a first set of firms that get one discount, then maybe there's another range that shows a second discount, and so on. For the discount percentage, retailers expect those discounts to be in line with other firms, right? If your discount is not as big as other firms, those retailers are not going to push your products as much because they don't make as much money. And as well, they certainly expect greater discounts as they sell more volume. They expect to get rewarded for their better performance. For the trade allowance, here again, you want to be similar to other firms. And the research reports on competitive spending will give you some information on that. But again, if you have a weaker product, you'll probably need to give them more of a trade allowance to promote it more and push it more than if you have a really strong product. For the sales team, that you're going to intend to grow with the units sold. And the mix across channels should largely reflect kind of the percentage of your overall sales. So if pro shops are 40% of your dollar sales, then you would expect them to be about 40% of your spending of your sales force would be to that channel. For new products, I think here you really want to make sure you limit cannibalization, right? You don't want your new product to be highly similar to your existing products, and you really want to try to satisfy an important need that's unmet. So look for some area out there where there's attributes that people desire, but there's not great products meeting that right now. For advertising, here you want to consider that product life cycle. So we would tend to have very high levels of advertising when we first launch a product, so people can learn about it. But then over time, as people start to learn about it and awareness maxes out, we cut back that advertising. And so here's, well, you'll really want to watch that awareness and see how well it's doing so we can put money in. And also watch your perceptions. If you're cutting back advertising, that's going to tend to lower perceptions of how good you are in the market because people won't be hearing your message as much. So if those start to drop a bit, you may want to put advertising back into that product. And here as well, a field study can be an excellent tool for helping to understand the level of advertising and what you get for that. For coupons, you're often going to use those to build initial awareness, so people are willing to try the product. But it's also a great tool for doing ongoing price discrimination, especially if you have particularly high prices in the market. You may want to offer coupons from time to time to try to get some of those customers that are more price sensitive, that wouldn't buy your product otherwise. For samples, we often use those to build initial awareness. Again, when we first launch a product, we want people to be able to try it and to see how good it is, especially if it's a better product. And then we tend to reduce those somewhat over time. And again, competition can be a nice guide here to see how much competitors are spending on that so that you have a reasonable share of voice for that. For your media focus, here I think you want to target one segment as your key focus for a product, especially for targeted products and when you have smaller budgets. You want to put your money toward the audience that's going to be most receptive for what you're offering. In terms of your creative focus, I think you want to select attributes that matter to your customers, but make sure they're not a weakness of your product. You certainly don't want to highlight attributes that are not a strength of your product versus competitors. Last, the field study. Those are really good use for what you consider kind of a risky change. Like, wow, this is a big change we want to make. Maybe it's a large change in price, and you're kind of nervous about making such a big change. Field studies are fantastic tools to use for that. And so as you do your field studies, you only get one per year. So you may want to think about those of which one you may want to do each year and even plan a little bit ahead. Unless the conjoint is an excellent tool too for calculating brand value. It's quite useful for new product design and for your pricing. And so again, here's an example below that you can work through to see how we can convert the levels of the attributes into a dollar amount. So this does it for the attribute of look. And so make sure you look through that math and try to understand the calculations being done. And here's some other general tips for playing. If I just look at what teams tend to do well with simulations and the ones that struggle. So one, make sure you read the story and the handbook. That you can find those on the support tab in the application. Also, as you go through the simulation, make sure you recheck things each year, as a lot can change in a single year. For the information, realize the research can tell you many things. There's a lot of things that can be found there and different insights, but you won't be able to fully answer every question. Sometimes you just kind of have to use your intuition and sometimes just make some guesses. That's the nature of marketing. I would understand the logic. one thing I would suggest here is break up the task. Let people kind of have expertise areas. And by that, I don't mean that only one person should understand pricing. What this means is have someone designated on your team that maybe they're the pricing expert. They've looked more into that issue. Everyone else is also still looking at it, but then that expert can suggest or recommend what they're thinking on pricing and get feedback from the teammates and help lead that discussion. And so you want to be knowledgeable enough to provide that feedback and ask probing questions, but I think you want that depth of certain people that really looked at some of those different topics. Another thing that really tends to help teams is hypothesize why things are happening. The results in this simulation are far from random. There's reasons that things are happening. And often if you're not doing as well as you would like, you need to really figure out what's the bottleneck that's holding me back. Is it awareness and people don't know about my product? Is it my price is too high? Is it I don't have an effective sales force, so retailers aren't pushing me or carrying my products? Try to figure out what's that limiting factor, and that's where you need to put your money to have the most effect. And last, make sure you understand what questions each research answers. That research is there for a reason. You'll find that different research reports help you with different questions and decisions. Another tip is follow your overall performance. And here you can't look at the numbers in a vacuum. Rather, you want to compare your trends against the other teams. And that's the best gauge of how you're doing. I mean, sometimes the overall market will just have a good year and go up, and everyone goes up. Other years it may not. Second, make sure you view the scorecard messages. Those are really red flags more than approval. So it's not going to say, just because it doesn't say anything doesn't mean you're doing great. It's meant more to just flag things that are problematic. And also watch for new products. Competitors are always launching products, so you want to be looking to see what's coming on the market there. And make sure you use your R&D. The market sees it as a really bad sign if you don't launch a product when you had a chance to. That makes them think that you're not really committed to the future and you don't have any good ideas. So make sure you don't forget to launch those products when you get the chance. And a scorecard message will tell you when you have the chance to do that. As well, I think you want to manage your logistics. So again, the individual demo, the individuals will decide for round one, play. Then they can rewind, decide again for round one, and play round one more time. Then I would bring those decision summaries to compare in the first meeting. You should get an email with those files to help you do that. What I do not want you to do is to strategize your individual plays across the team. So I don't want one player to say, hey, I'll test this range of prices. The second player, okay, now you test this range. And third person, now you test this range. It's trivial for me to tell if someone did that by looking at the individual decisions, which I can see. So please just play it as an individual. You'll get more out of the learning. And frankly, teams do better when they do this because sometimes someone thinks about something completely different than the others and it takes the team in a great direction. I would plan on each round taking about a couple hours. It'll obviously vary by team. One thing that I have seen that teams that are effective tend to consider taking their notes to capture their logic. So when they make a decision in round 3, they kind of keep a little note to themselves of why did they make that choice. Then we get to round 4, they can look back to that to see what their logic was and what they were thinking. And I think you'll find it saves you a lot of time and helps you make more consistent and better decisions. As well, think about the overall effects of what you're deciding. Marketing has a lot of interactions. So for example, advertising is going to be more effective if it's a new product. Likewise, a well-designed product is going to do better if it has advertising, right? They go together. You'll also want to think about the ROI of your spending, right? As you spend more, you get some wear out. Also, the effectiveness of the spending level will both depend on how much you spend, but also how much you spend in comparison to your competitors. As everyone does more advertising, you'll have to do a little more to be as effective. Realize too that your results may lag your investments. So just because you spend a lot on advertising now doesn't mean you'll instantly get all the benefit of that awareness. Many people think that half of the value of advertising is actually in the next year. And similar things happen in this simulation. And realize competitors respond. So once you take an action, you won't know the full effects till you see how competitors respond to that. And here's, make sure you solve the right problem. So don't assume the default values are wise in year 1. Who knows how those got set? And likewise, don't just change something for the sake of feeling you have to change everything. Think through each decision yourself. When you have poor results, really try to dig down to why you think that happened. And here's where the research reports can be useful. As well, when you're digging into those research reports, make sure you use the detailed views when possible versus overall blended results. For example, if I want to see how much people like certain products, looking at the overall blended could be a really bad measure because maybe my product is only targeted to one segment. And so I'm just trying to make that segment happy. I don't really care about the other segments. So make sure you're not just using overall blended averages. Try to get to the segment level or the channel level when appropriate. And then last, realize additional analysis may help. So a lot of the screens have a little symbol that will let you download the text file that then you can then open in Excel, which can help with some calculations. For instance, trying to figure out the percentage of sales and how you want to allocate your sales force and how other companies are spending on coupons or advertising. Those Excel calculations can make that a little bit easier. Also realize the research is not perfect. It will be noisy, especially the mixed contribution. But again, it's better than going on nothing and having nothing to set your directions. Finally, a few last important notes. So one, this is a custom scenario that I'm going to change every year. Obviously, this is the first time we've used this version. And so you won't be able to find any real information that will help you. I want to use your thinking. Two, realize it is easy to confuse the years. So just realize that like the research for year one is not available until year two. And so, playing 2 years means you reach year 3. So generally it's not too hard to keep track of it. But just if you're talking to someone else on your team, make sure you're clear about when you say the year number, what you're talking about. The year should be played by the dates listed in Canvas. And I don't want you to play far ahead, as I'll have some interim discussions where you may find out useful information that you want to act on. But if you've already played ahead, you won't be able to do that. Finally, you'll have one do-over rewind for the group simulation. The rewinds make sense to use when you did much worse than most other groups and you know what you would do differently. So I would not use the rewind until I see how the other groups performed, because maybe it's just a worse year for everybody. Wait and see how they did. And if you did far worse than the others, that would be a suggestive for rewind, but make sure you also know what you would do differently. And here you can look at the research reports for the next year before you rewind to see as well what you might do differently. And really this rewind is meant as just kind of a do-over. I used to not have them in simulations, and then teams might say, I wish could have done this. Well, here's your I wish you could. You get one chance to do that at some point in the simulation. And again, a word of warning, rewinds do not always improve results. So don't use it if you don't really need it. You won't always do better. And then finally, there's the link to the grade. So I'm going to use 3 weighted measures, so it will be linked to performance. So 25% will be on your cumulative revenue, how big you get as a firm. That's one attribute the markets often care about. 25% will be your cumulative net income. It's going to be your profit. And then 50% will be the final stock. And so the stock is going to overweight more recent performance to keep people motivated and reward people that are growing and getting stronger. It's also going to reflect your growth rate, like a stock would. And it's going to reflect different market signals. So if you slash your advertising or don't launch new products, those are going to hurt your stock price. Those send signals that matter. And last, I do reserve the right to assess a penalty for any end gaming. I've tried to prevent any kind of weird behaviors being rewarded. If I see a behavior that makes no sense and the team can't provide any reasonable logic at all for why they did something, but somehow it rewarded them, I do reserve the right to adjust grades based on that. I've never had an issue with this, but I just want to have that right there. And then last, realize the grades are normalized. So if one team had a stock price of 100 and one team had a stock price of 50, the one team's not going to get a grade that's twice as high. I will standardize and shape them to a more normal curve. Other than that, I hope you find that helpful. It's trying to glean a lot of the insights that have proved effective for teams in the past. I think you'll find them effective for you as well. And really don't forget that it's meant to be a way to learn and to have fun. And I think games can do that a lot better than a lot of our other exercises. So make sure you enjoy the experience. Other than that, have fun. Hope this helps.